Okay, good. So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining this week debrief on Israeli democracy. My name is Offir Gutelzon, a co-founder of UnXeptable, based in Palo Alto, and it's almost 5 years, 6 years since we started caring from remote for saving Israeli democracy. Today we have really special guests with us today, Dan Meridor, former Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Justice, and from the Likud Party, past Likud Party, uh, still Likud Party, and Noa Sattath, who is the Executive Director of the Association of Civil Rights in Israel, ACRI, who is in the front line of legal and social battle and provide the analysis of how this legislative attack impacts the daily lives, and she's working on it every day. So thank you both for joining. And we are going to switch to Hebrew now. And so just make sure you are moving to the right channel. אז אנחנו מתחילים הערב
We would like to
בערב
start this
כרגיל, איכשהו
evening.
אנחנו מגיעים ליום רביעי, ואיך
As
שתמיד יום
always,
רביעי זה עוד
whenever we
יום
get to
דרמטי,
Wednesday, and
כל
always
שבוע
Wednesdays are
מחדש,
dramatic, time and time
והיום
again, week and week
הדרמה
again.
בכנסת,
And today, the
והדרמה
drama
עם
in
בן
the
גביר,
Knesset and
ומה
the
שקורה
drama with
בשטחים,
Ben Gvir and what's happening in the
ועליית
occupied
האנטישמיות בחו"ל,
territories
הכל
and the
מתנקז
rise of
להכל,
anti-Semitism
אבל
abroad.
היום במיוחד
Everything funnels
הכנסת
into one
הצביעה
place. But today, the
110
Knesset
נגד,
voted
כולם הצביעו
110.
בעצם, כל
Everyone
הקואליציה
voted, actually,
והאופוזיציה,
the
הצביעו
coalition and the
לפזר את
opposition
הכנסת
to dissolve
בהצבעה
the Knesset
טרומית.
and
תכף נבין
in
מה זה
that
אומר.
preliminary
אנחנו
vote. What does it mean?
נמצאים
We are
במצב שבו
in a
הכנסת
situation
אמורה,
in
הבחירות
which
אמורות להיות באוקטובר 27,
the
27 לאוקטובר,
elections are going to be
או
on
כמו
27th
שאומרים לפעמים
October, or
27
sometimes,
לאוקטובר,
yeah,
ויש המון
27th of
המון דיונים
October.
על לנסות להקדים את זה לספטמבר,
And
אנחנו נבין מה זה
there
אומר,
are
אבל
discussions
הממשלה
trying to
הזאת לא
move it up to
עוצרת לרגע,
September, but
מנסה לגרום
this
להפיכה
government
המשטרית
doesn't stop for one moment and wants to
להתקדם.
make that judicial overhaul move
וזה בעצם
forward.
יהיה הדיון היום,
And this is going to be the
הנושא
subject of our
העיקרי זה בעצם
discussion. And
איזה
the
חוקים
main
עומדים על
point
הפרק,
is what
האם זה יקרה לפני
bills are
הבחירות,
on
אם זה
the
לא יקרה לפני
agenda. Will it
הבחירות, ומה
happen
המשמעות של
before
זה
the
קדימה
elections or not? What
לישראל היהודית והדמוקרטית.
meaning does it bear
אז
on
אני אתחיל
Israel
רק
as a democratic and
בקצרה,
Jewish state? I'll start very
ואזכיר
briefly
כמובן למי
and
שצריך
remind to all
שהשיחה
those who
מנהלת
need
בעברית,
reminding
ואנחנו
that
שומעים
this
את
talk will be
הצ'אנלים
held
באנגלית
in Hebrew,
ובערבית.
and
So
you
if you
can
are
use
just
the
joining,
channels
switch to this
in
channel for
English and
interpretation to English.
Spanish for the interpreting.
דן, אני אתחיל איתך.
Dan,
אז
I
קודם
will
כל,
start
ברוך
with
הבא,
you. First of
אחרי
all,
שהצטרפת
welcome.
שוב,
Thank
דיברנו
you for once
לדעתי
again
לפני קרוב
joining
לשנה,
us. I think that we were met
ואני רוצה רגע
almost a year
שתעביר את
ago,
התחושות
and
שלך
I would like
מהיום
you
הזה,
to
או
convey
מהכמה
your
שבועות
feelings from
האחרונים,
this
של
day
מה
or
שקורה
from the last few
מבחינת
months
ההפיכה
concerning
המשטרית,
what is happening in
ומה
Israel
לדעתך
with respect to
המשמעות
the
של
judicial
ההצבעה
overhaul,
הטרומית
and
היום על
what
פיזור הכנסת.
meaning does the preliminary vote has today. There's no meaning to the voting in the Knesset today. The elections will be held the latest 5 months from now in October, and maybe after several struggles, it will be moved up to September. It's a marginal question. It bears no significance. Today, it's a preliminary vote that precedes the 3 readings, and it's just talk. It has no meaning. But what we can say is that we've been in the midst of an attack that's been going on for a number of years, a very serious attack that manages partially to turn Israel from a democratic country to a different type of country. So the democratic regime is under threat because the values that were joined to everyone are no longer in human, and the institutions protecting them are under attack. First of all, the judiciary system, the free press, the state comptroller's office, And this attack was expressed in January 23 with the announcement of Levin as the Minister of Justice, but it started earlier and it reached very dangerous scopes. It is a global trend. I don't want to say what is happening south of Canada, but because I'm polite, but populism and speech against those elites and those with privileges, and we decide who, what to do. Who are you to tell us? This is a very dangerous trend that backlashes on everything that is happening since the Second World to focusing on human rights and protecting minorities against power of the majority. It happens worldwide, and some of it happens in Israel, but the fundamental basis that was agreed upon, even though there was no constitution since the establishment of the State of Israel, is no longer agreed upon. Equality, really? Jews and Arabs are equal? Men and women are equal? Gays and straights are equal? No more. But it starts in New York, not in Israel. The Jewish person who came from the US to Israel, named Kahana, starting with his racist speech. I personally in the Likud made an extreme effort to remove him from the Knesset and to remove racism from the public talk. And the basic law that we accepted in the Knesset said that those inciting to racism cannot participate in the elections. And we brought evidence attesting to his racism, and he was disqualified. And I thought that it was okay. You can be in favor of peace or in favor of the occupied territories, but not a racist. Ben-Gvir, who was appointed to be in charge of the delinquents and the offenders, and Smotrich is no different in their conduct in Judea and Samaria and the pogroms against the Arabs and the crime in Israel. That's a fundamental moral change, including the attack attempting to minimize the force or the power that restrains the institutions. That's no democracy. You have to limit the majority. It used to be in Israel very strongly, especially the judiciary, the judicial review, the judges, the free press, but all of these are under attack. And I do hope that in the elections that will take place within a few months, according to every poll, this government will be toppled and another one would come. And I do hope that they will understand the depth of the crisis and they will manage to restart the system. So, Noah, give us a short overview concerning the bills that are now being passed in the Knesset, or the efforts are being made to pass them in the Knesset, and how are they related to what happened so far, and how can they influence the elections, the pending elections. So first of all, good evening and good morning to all those to whom this is a morning now. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you, Offir, and all the members of UnXeptable. Thank you for the great job that you're doing. And to all those who came today, I do appreciate the effort that is required to be focused on what is happening in Israel. And I'm grateful to all those who remain with us in this very lengthy tiring battle. When it comes to what's happening in the Knesset right now, I agree with Dan that it's very hard to know if there will be a dissolution of the Knesset next week and then the elections will be in September or in 2 months' time, which will make the elections happen in October. Within this uncertainty, there are two types of bills or laws that are being advanced. There are those laws that are waiting for the second and third reading, which is at the very latest stages of legislation, and others which are in a preliminary stage. The government is trying to bring them to the first reading because if they pass that, you can renew the legislation from the place it's in now and not to start from scratch in the next Knesset. And I thought of discussing 5 laws which at the moment they are trying to advance. Two of them are related to the judicial coup. I would like to remind everyone that in January 23, Yariv Levin spoke publicly and said that he was attempting to pass his judicial overhaul and to pass 5 laws that will change or transform the judicial system. From that date, January 2023, the government had a majority to pass these laws every day, and despite that, most of them have not passed. One that did pass is the reasonability clause, and it was overturned by the court and also the committee for the selection of judges. And next month, we're going to discuss this in the Supreme Court, sitting as a high court of justice. And now the Knesset is trying to pass the third of the 6, which discusses the splitting up of the Attorney General's roles, and that's the politicization of this institution. And this is one of the most important part of the checks and balances. Noah, could you please tell us what the role of the Attorney General is and how is it different? So the Attorney General's job she represents the law. The government is attempting to carry out various processes, and the Attorney General has to express the legal point of view, if it's legal or illegal. In a government such as ours, which is constantly trying to push the boundaries of the law, her job is extremely important. In our view, in our association, the Attorney General has not carried out her job during the war with respect to the conduct of the state in the occupied territories. But when it comes to protecting the democratic systems and human rights in Israel, the Attorney General is experiencing terrible, inhumane pressures. It's unbelievable. And she's constantly confronting a government that is attempting to minimize her rights. And the position of the Attorney General is not binding, but if we petition and the Attorney General agrees with the position of the petition, usually the petition is accepted. Her position is extremely significant within the system. So just to make this clearer, in Israel, there are very few checks and balances, unlike the US. So, as a matter of fact, every action that the government wants to carry out, the interpretation is done by the Attorney General's office, not only the Attorney General herself. And there's no reason to go to the Supreme Court if the Attorney General said that it's illegal. Usually there isn't, but in this government, very often we do go, because even though she says it's illegal, they do want to carry on with that. We don't have constitutions. We don't have 2 legislative chambers. There's no separation between the executive and the legislative instances. So the Attorney General is very significant in these systems. So if they're trying to advance 2 laws of the judicial overhaul. One is that law of the politicization of the Attorney General's office. Perhaps it would pass in first reading next week. It's important to say that Rothman is advancing it, and his party, which is the Religious Zionist Party, and he is the main mouthpiece of the judicial overhaul. And the other law is that of the Division for the Investigation of Police Officers. Right now, it is under functioning, but politicizing this entity will make sure that we will not be able to recover it in the future. There are other laws that attest to the character of this government. One of them is the Annexation law, which includes the Israeli law, or applies the Israeli law in the occupied territories, and it actually is aiming to allow to the Israeli Antiquity Authority to operate the way they did in the West Bank and Gaza. Today, they want to expand it to apply to Gaza, and the Israeli Antiquity Authority can enter any area and to take all the cultural assets of those citizens protected by the international law, to bring them to Israel and to do with them whatever the government wishes to do. So, and that too is before the second and the third reading. I believe that it will be passed in the next few days. An additional law that is before the second and third reading is aiming to allow gender separation between the studies in advanced studies. Right now, the assumption is that we can allow the ultra-Orthodox, the Haredis, to enter the higher education. So there's separation in the lower degrees, but now they want to allow this separation in higher degrees in the academia. This is also before the second and third reading, and I believe it will be passed next month. And another one is that of the holy sites, which allows to impose 7 years of imprisonment on anyone that behaves in the area of the Wailing Wall in the way that the rabbi of the Wailing Wall would not like. All those points are leading to, Dana would address this question to you. We're constantly saying that judicial whole is there to serve three narratives: corruption, messianism, and abstaining from the conscription of the Haredis. So the reason why the government is dissolving itself or not, it has to do with the conscription of the Haredis. And Netanyahu is playing on these two fronts. I saw him on the one hand saying, I will pass the law, I won't pass the law. How do you view and how do you explain this topic of Netanyahu playing on those two fronts? Yeah, it's not, Netanyahu is not committed to the truth. He says he doesn't care whether it's truth or not. It just, what matters is that it works. It's not something that he's doing and is new. But I think that when it comes to the judicial overhaul, that's a very serious problem. Initially, that allowed a small number of Haredis not to serve in the army, just like when you have outstanding musicians or athletes who were exempt from military service. Perhaps it was a mistake, but the numbers were very small, but they grew and grew. And at the moment, dozens of thousands of people who have to be conscripted abstain from it. And not only that, they turned this into a banner that they hoist. And you hear things like, we will die and not be enlisted, as if those enlisted are flawed. And when you tell them people are getting killed, and they say it's your problem because you're not praying, it's the praying that actually saves those who are not killed. They truly believe, I assume that they truly believe that the military service is not the most important thing. The most important thing is praying to God. And I heard Dudi Amsalem yesterday, the minister, who compares between a soldier in Gaza and a student, a yeshiva student. And actually, it's not the studying the Torah that they care about, but rather the lifestyle of those people in the military. If I want to study the Talmud in the Hebrew University, I won't get an exemption, only if I study in the yeshiva. They don't want those young people will see a different lifestyle, like seeing a girl staying with in the same room with another girl. That's terrible. They want to maintain the lifestyle of the past, and that's the main reason. This is why they don't care. And the rabbi said, even if you shirk service, it doesn't matter as long as you don't reach the army. And during the war, when we do lack a great number of soldiers, that creates a major difficulty. That can undermine and harm the government, and also the religious Zionism and those who are not religious. and others who come from the Haredis. That's a very tough combination, and Netanyahu maneuvers among them. I don't know if the law will pass or not, but he wants to maintain the bloc that he built. What turned out of the Likud, which is exactly the opposite of the Likud of the past, today, together with the racists and the Haredis. That's a very solid bloc. And he always wants to know what will happen after the elections. He wants to maintain his coalition, and that's what he wishes to do. Whether he succeed or not, that I do not know. But the most important thing is the change that will take place in the state of Israel, as Noah said. It's not a minor thing. It's not marginal. It's not something technical. Something very profound is happening. And you have to say that call for division and this divisive attempt does not turn to the ethical values or the knowledge, but to use TikTok and to appeal to the sentiments. It's happening not only in Israel, and it does work. When it comes to ethical actions or elements and restraining of power, these became those of the privileged ones. Who needs these elements? Why is it so terrible? We always had political controversies in Israel. We talked about television programs 40 years ago. We had debates on the streets, relations with Germany and the occupied territories, and capitalism, and socialism, and corruption. But there was an agreement on the democratic basic principles of the Declaration of Independence and institutions that were respected, no matter if you didn't like their decision. If today a public officer would speak in favor of democracy and human rights and the rule of law, he will be tagged as left-wing. These are words that Menachem Begin would iterate every day, as nobody spoke any other way. And it's being under attack now. It's not just a technical matter. You take the Committee for the Selection of Judges, the law that will come into effect in the next Knesset, and they turn this committee into something political. So if you're a citizen whose property was taken away, you knew that there's a chance that the court would stop it because the court would not be subjected to the government. It was not selected politically. I served in this committee for 8 years. There was no politics there. There was no discussion over values because nobody used any other values. Today, they want people who have different values, and they're the ones who would follow with the government, and it loses the balance between the power of the government and the protection of civil rights. And when the government is unrestrained and it has no institutional or ethical restraints, that turns our country into a different one. I'm not saying this only as a person who cares about democracy and fights for democracy, but also as a Jewish person, from not the democratic side, from the Jewish side. We are Jewish people, and we've been Jewish for the last 2,500 years. We've been minorities, and human rights developed in the last 200 years, and many Jews were among those who pushed those human rights movements. When you're in the diaspora, you want to maintain the rights of minorities, and the test comes when you are a majority. As a Jewish person, to see such conduct in the state of Israel against the Jewish values, all that we can find in Judaism, we behave not only in a non-democratic way, we take a very shocking version of Judaism, and we make this the emblem of Judaism. But when you talk about the supremacy of Judaism, the white supremacy in the US, if you're not in favor of that, you're a traitor. That was outside the boundaries of the discussion, and today it's the mainstream. The next elections are critical, not only in the elections itself, not only the elections themselves, but also the understanding that I hope will happen, that the government that will be set up later, that they will understand how profound the problem is, and for them to have the power, the leadership to stop it in one blow, to stop those laws, to stop what happened, to revoke terrible appointments of people that are not committed to the values of the state, and to restart. Otherwise, this great great project that we built here and we took so much pride in, I don't want to even continue and say what will happen to it. So speaking about minorities is something critical, because one of the things that we are constantly discussing, and in this government, they are being discussed in a very blatant way, it's the delegitimization done to the Arab society in Israel, let alone the Jewish supremacy that you can see in the occupied territories against Palestinians on a day-to-day basis. Noah, when it comes to this topic, and it's actually a question addressed to you both, the question is whether the framework of the discourse is determined in the Knesset, and what can the Knesset do in order to revoke the voting for Arab parties, and how will the change in the role of the Attorney General will impact these topics? I believe that it's so hard to hear about those laws passed by the Knesset, but it is something that is quite worrisome. We see quite clearly what the law was and how it looks now after the changes that the government introduced. But I think that a very influential element, no less, is the normative erosion. In other words, the very discourse, this insightful, racist, this lack of care to the rule of law and human life, even if that is not expressed in laws, it is a damage that we will need a lot of time to overcome. And I hear what Dan is saying when he says that the next government will need to revoke some of the appointments that this Knesset and this government passed and to change some of the laws. But I believe that no less important is to change this racist, insightful discourse taking place now. And it has so many results in the field which are at the level of policies and what's happening on the street. When we talk about the violence in the Arab society, which is truly unprecedented, Minister Ben-Gvir is celebrating with birthday cakes that have the nooses on them and is hoisting the flag above those who participated in the flotilla. But at the moment, the minister who is in charge of the police cannot contend with a crisis of violence and crime that is unprecedented in the history of the state of Israel. It's not a law that passed, but it's the cheapening of the human life done by the government in the occupied territories and then in Israel. I would like to agree with what Noah said. You asked about laws. The Knesset is indeed legislating, but ultimately it's a matter of leadership. It is the leadership that counts. By the way, not the majority. The majority is not enough. Stalin had a majority, Hitler had a majority, and Mussolini had a majority. But in the Noach portion of the week, it says that man is evil from his origin. Unless he's told, do not do this or behave differently, the result will be the survival of the fittest, as Darwin dictates. In the past, in order to be a leader, in leadership, there's tension between two opposite factors. First of all, you have to represent the electorate. You have to represent the electorate. They want something, and you should do what they tell you. An opposite vector is lead them to a place that they wouldn't have reached without you. Today, you can see it not only in Israel. You go to the lowest instinct, because when you convey the message on TikTok or Messenger, or Instagram, you go to the lowest of the low. You ask the votes what to do. You are being led by the voters. You're not leading them. To illustrate this, if my mentor, Menachem Begin, would have done a poll to see, should we give up on the entire Sinai and to apply unilateral rule over Sinai, he wouldn't have had the majority for it. But he decided that that was the right thing to do. He didn't ask the public what to do. Even the Labour Party didn't, some of them did not vote for this. He was convinced that that would be the right thing to start this incredible peace measure, a revolution that was unprecedented. And this is where he was leading, because he never asked the voters what they think. He tried to convince them of his own opinion, and by that to change the situation. The entire ethics is based on what somebody says is right or not right, whether it's Plato or Moses. You have the connection between the voters and that who is being voted for. Today, the leaders are not leading the public, they are being led by the public's instincts. So the question is, how do you create leadership, and how do you re-lead to those right values which are restraining the instincts and restraining the desires? That is being attacked in the entire world today, and also here. That's why I said that I do hope that the future leadership, in the hope that there will be a different leadership, there's a good chance that they would understand what we are discussing now, that they have to speak differently from the top. Education is never what you say, but it's always how you behave. The leader is a model. How does he talk? How does he behave? And when you see the way these ministers talk and members of Knesset and their conduct and their behavior, the racist expressions and all that, people see it. And if they can do it, why cannot I? So this is why we need leadership to lead and not look for ways to please the public. This is something that I see all around the world. You see populism in Western Europe and in other places. There are populist parties that follow the instincts. It's in the Jewish tradition, a hero is the one that controls his instincts. So that pertains to the general direction, and I do hope that we will have such a leadership in the future. I'd like to address your question, Offir, about the elections. We are monitoring the attempts to change the basic law of the Knesset that talks about disqualifying parties and candidates. At the moment, the legislation does not proceed, and our evaluation is that even if the elections are held at the end of October, this law will not pass. The elections will pass the elections will take place, they have taken place in the past. Even if they disqualify the Arab parties, can you explain the political election committee? What does it mean? From the minute elections are announced, parties are presenting their slates, and then the election committee is convened in the Knesset. It reflects the current Knesset, where there is a major majority to the right, but throughout the past 20 years, the election committees decided that the Arab parties will not run. Even moderate ones like Ram were disqualified by the political committee. Not always. There were cases that they were disqualified. But since 2005, I believe that that's the way it was. And then they petitioned automatically to the Supreme Court, and traditionally the Supreme Court returns the right to contend back to the Arab parties. I believe that that's going to be the case this time. There's going to be a very fierce incitement campaign against the political leadership of the Arab leaders, but I do not think that there will be a constitutional or a legal change. It will be very difficult to pass it under the current schedule. What we've been seeing in the last few months is that there are attempts made by the government, Ben-Gvir and the Prime Minister, to reignite different conflicts in Israel, in the Negev, or the flotilla, and Gaza, in order to reduce the motivation of the Arab population to vote. Of course, we need to mention that this incitement and attacks have been happening since Netanyahu said that the left-wing voters forgot what it means to be Jewish. And we see this past week a significant rise in the beginning of the incitement against Jews around the world. Even yesterday or the day before, the U.S. ambassador to Israel calls to people from J Street cancer in the heart of the Jewish nation. And Mai Golan, Yechiel Leiter, the U.S. ambassador to the EU, the Israel to the U.S. And today, Minister Mai Golan talks about Gilad Karib and says things that cannot be repeated. And Noah, who is a reform rabbi, can address that perhaps. And the question that I'm trying to lead to is whether we see a certain spillover toward populations within the Green Line and Jews of the same norms that you discussed. Actually, all those who do not support the regime, one way or another, whether it's from the Orthodox, the national religious, is actually denounced by the community. And I'd like to go back to you, Dan, with respect to the leadership. Do we see opposition leaders or the change bloc, do we see them as leading, or are they being led by the nose according to norms defined by the Likud, for example, concerning the Arab parties? Except for Yair Golan, they all think that they should not be a part of the 61 votes comprising the coalition. I'll say something about the Arab parties and their votes. A few years ago, they created dichotomy between two concepts. Is Israel the state of the Jewish people or the state of all its citizens? That's a crazy dichotomy. Every state is a state of all its citizens. That's a democracy. Whose country is it if not the country of its citizens? And if it's not the country of Arabs, what is their country? But my question is deeper. Zionism demanded a state for the Jewish people in the land of Israel, but they always added another condition. We want a Jewish majority. The Arabs objected to the Jewish majority, and the British played with the white papers. And the question is, why Zionism demanded a Jewish majority? Only because they knew that everyone would vote, Jews and Arabs alike. Now they're trying to find tricks to prevent Arabs to vote. The Arabs in the occupied territories do not have the right to vote, but the ones in Green Line in the 1950s and 60s, there was military rule in the Arab territories. The Menachem Begin, the head of the Herut party, wanted to revoke the military regime because it was not democratic. And ultimately it was revoked after years. This is why I do. If the Arabs do not agree, if the Haredis, the definition should not be according to who you are, but rather the way things are presented. I believe that the Arabs, just like among the Jews, I met with Mansour Abbas a while ago, and I told him the following thing, and that relates to what I said earlier about leadership. I was astonished by you because you are a leader. You didn't ask the public what to do, but you gave personal example. You said that Arabs need to take care of the Arab population and to become a part of the Israeli state. And you are a leader. You are a very significant individual, and you are much better than so many other Jews. So the fact that people are afraid to say explicitly that the Arabs are exactly like Jews, they are fully legitimate. even if it is electorally right, and because of the 7th of October, people are afraid of the Arabs, it created a discourse that makes an impression that the Arabs are illegitimate. I think it's wrong. If the elections, and according to the polls today, which are pretty consistent for the past year, that the current government would have 50 or 51 mandates, I have no doubt that there will be a coalition of nearly 70. Unlike, we don't need 61 to form a government. 40 against 30 is enough to form a government. Even if the Arabs abstain, there will be a government. I think that some of the things will be resolved. I do hope that they will not say that they will not join the Arabs. Mr. Bennett, who today is the leader of Beyachad together with Lapid, who comes from the religious Zionism, as we call it, he was with the Arabs when he was prime minister. So if he's like that, I don't know about Lieberman. There won't be a problem. But today they're not saying it. He's not saying it, but he's not saying the opposite. He's leaving it very vague. Yair Golan speaks very clearly. Eisenkot says that it's possible. If it were me, I would speak more clearly, but it's only tactical. It won't change the essence. I believe that you will be able to reach agreements and there will be a coalition, and this has to be rectified, of course. It is very painful because you see the Jewish-Arab conflict is a conflict of many years, and there were discriminations and there were accusations, but in the past 2.5 years, Israeli Arabs are in a complicated situation in which their own people are fighting against their own people, and there's no protest of the Arabs against the state. They are so well integrated. I'm asking people to go to hospitals and pharmacies and to see the full integration of Arabs in the Israeli society. It's only advancing. And now this economy is created and there are distance beyond the principal thing. It's stupid when it comes to our own interest. We can carry out our Israeli character altogether without excluding anyone. It's a severe mistake, and I do hope that it will work out. We should say that we do hope that the discourse will change. The optimistic aspect of it all is that with all the pressure of the coalition and the terrible laws and the terrible speak, in all polls, they do not have more than 50 to 51 mandates. Most people do not want them. Even the real Likud that I was a part of do not want them. We saw the 6th of January in America. I don't know what will happen here. I can't say what will happen, but they don't have a majority. They're a minority. Even a war that is with the government, and even when they thought that it would succeed, it did not increase that percentage. So the population that protested against the judicial reform or the judicial overhaul, and we joined all the demonstrations. There was a public protest that was very impressive, and most of the people do not want it. So there's a foundation for the hope that unless unexpected things will happen, we will be able to return this lost ship back on its track. I will take a few questions from the audience. If you have questions, you can place them in the chat. One of the things that are of great concern to American Jews and Jews abroad is public opinion, or the implications of what is happening in Israel on the American public opinion that impacts what is happening in Israel, and also the rise of anti-Semitism worldwide. And we see it from the right, we see it from the left. Only yesterday, a right-wing candidate, pretty anti-Semitic in Kentucky, said that in the state of Kentucky, I don't know in which district, relates to the fact that the other candidate is in Tel Aviv, and the Democratic candidate from Texas is imagining that there will be
בטקסס מאייס לציונים. אבל העולם השתגע לחלוטין.
concentration camps in Texas, and they will change from ISIS to Zionists. So it's important to tell the world when you are fighting for human rights of Palestinians as well as Israeli citizens of every type, do you feel that it impacts public opinion, or perhaps public opinion doesn't see it even, and it's only Ben-Gvir, Ben-Gvir? That's an excellent question. I do think that in the past 2 and some years, it was very difficult to discuss any topic that was not the war and our impact. Even though we did try to carry out various petitions, our impact over this war was not really significant. And I do feel that in the last few months, since the ceasefire in Gaza, there are more availability or readiness to speak about other topics in Israel and also to hear about the opposition to the government, but it's still very narrow. It's a trajectory that started from a very low point, but it is rising. It's ascending, but it's not a key topic yet. And I think that Jews who oppose to the government in Israel and in the diaspora are in a very isolated place. And in that sense, we have one another. We are in a very dark period of time, and we have to continue to do the right thing every day until this reality will be clearer. And this insightful discourse will lower the flames a little bit. I do want to say that I feel the beginning of this calm in those circles that I attend, which are international human rights protectors. There's more readiness to hear us now, more than a year ago. I cannot say how that would impact other realms. I'd like to say something, Offir. There are a few trends. This anti-Israeli or anti-Semitic trend. On the 7th and 8th of October, in the social media, there were terrible attacks on Israel, even before our retaliation in Gaza, before the terrible images that were sent from Gaza. We monitored it, and we saw terrible things, and in the social media, there was a very orderly campaign. Even that the slogan, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," which means there won't be any Israel, that even preceded what happened. There are forces, some of them are anti-Semitic, and others were a very organized campaign, either by Iran or others. We had a talk about this with Guy Rolnick. I'm saying it does exist, and you can see anti-Semitism that is not necessarily related to what Israel did. So let's not forget that. It's not only us. Having said that, Israel has such a place that I wish to say something about. In this nation-state law, they determined that Israel is the state of the Jewish people, etc., etc. But if you're the state of the Jewish people, you must take care of what our state does to world Jewry. Today, they said that not only to help the world Jewry, but only in order to exclude the Arabs. But if you're responsible for world Jewry, when you do dangerous things, you have to be very careful. I have something else to say. Something happened in the last dozens of years that never happened in human history. Until 50 years ago, nobody saw wars while they were happening. People sat in Paris and they knew that Napoleon was fighting in Russia, but they didn't see war with their own eyes. People in America in 1944 did not see what is happening in Dresden. So They didn't see any war, but today you can see it as it happens on the screen. And another process is happening, which I have been seeing for 40 years, and that's the reversal of power. If you seem as strong for a long time, you become the villain. But if you look weak, you become the underdog, the righteous one. So this is why long wars are not good. We have to be very wary of long wars, especially if you're the strong side. The government did wrong. The war was necessary and definitely the right thing, but it should have lasted a few days or a few weeks. They should have accepted Joe Biden's advice and go for a political measure and to stop with a military measure, not because they do not deserve it. Terrible things were done there. Because of the fact that it's killing our image and it's a part of our struggle and the struggle of Jews around the world, and it was a very serious mistake. So Israel should be very careful about these things. And there's one more thing. I too was involved in human rights, and I'm very proud of the constitutional reform and the basic clause. I would lecture in the IDF about the ethical code of the IDF, and Israel always took pride that, when what happened in Kafar Qasim, there was the Golani courts, Yehuda Meir and the Intifada, to say to the army that there are things that are forbidden according to our internal code and definitely the international law. And I would explain to them that there are things that are undone because it does not abide by the humanitarian international law, not only in Israel, but also in the country that you live in. They did away with the international law. This is why the restraints have loosened. And I'm saying that even in a time of war, the instincts are evil. People just are not held accountable unless there's leadership that stops them. So these three anti-Semitism has to be treated, and the rule of only holding short wars, and what is forbidden to do and what is allowed. We have to remember that we are responsible for the entire Jewish people. We're incapable of protecting each and every single Jew, but we have to make sure that we do not impact them negatively. There are those in Israel who thought that they could give up on the support of the Jews in favor of the support of the evangelists. That's a very serious mistake. The bipartisan support that we used to get from America was critical. I saw it dozens of times whenever I visited the Congress. This support was very important, and we're losing it. It's extremely dangerous. It's strategically important. And if we remain with no Congress and without a president that supports us, where would this lead us strategically? That's the heritage of Netanyahu, as we call it. And this is why, by the way, it actually brings us back to that topic that we started with. What you said about the army, you probably understand it more than I do, one of the lines, the red lines, was the independent judiciary that allowed the army to examine itself and the court to examine itself, and then nobody reviewed us from the international court. The international law that can be enacted by the criminal court, according to the Rome Convention, just like they did in Yugoslavia or Rwanda. In Israel, we can also adjudicate against war crimes. We had a judicial system that was evaluated and appreciated in the world as a very, very good one. But as soon as that is subject to the regime, you lose that too. It's a very serious thing. You're right. We have to have this very deep change. We have to bring us back to the right way. I am fully aware of what is happening in our country, even though these similar things are happening around the world. We have 5 minutes before we end, and I would like, before we finish, we conducted this talk in Hebrew because we had Israelis who joined us, but we are 5 months before the elections, and there'll be a lot to rectify and mend afterwards. I'd be very happy if each of you could turn in English and say, what do you think the effective part or the practical part that Jews of the world can have in this partnership? As you said, our country is a home to all the Jewish people. And one of the things that I always hear from American Jews is that Israelis don't necessarily invite them to help. It's only to help with money. So what do you think the significant part that they can do?
Saving Israeli democracy.
So first of all, I'll turn back to your previous question about the attack on J Street and on Reform and Conservative Judaism from the past couple of days. And I know that it must be deeply offensive to many of the people who are involved and who are on this call. But I want to share that from our perspective as a civil and human rights organization in Israel, we know that when the government attacks us, that means that we're effective and that we are annoying the government and derailing its plans. So I think that the attack on both of these major bodies in the U.S. Jewish community is not random, and it is a testament to the work of so many different organizations and people to try and make an impact and support Israeli democratic institutions, Israeli human rights, and bringing this government down in a different government into power, hopefully in the next few months. I think that I would say two things. One is I think that the involvement of diaspora Jews and being involved and being interested in updating your communities is essential because, again, we are in desperate need in Israel of not only financial support, which we do need, but also moral support, advice, the wisdom of organizing and political strategy is important. And the second thing that I want to say is that this is not a sports game in the sense that there's not going to be a whistle after the elections, after which the Jewish supremacists and Kahanists are going to go away. After the elections, which again, I hope and believe like Dan does, that will bring about a different government. These politicians will attack the government, they will attack civil society, they will attack the press, they will use every tool in their power to keep undermining the hopefully positive processes that the next government will ensure. So first of all, I want you to build your stamina for that, okay? It's not going to be done in October. This struggle between populism and democracy is the struggle of our generation, and we need to have the ability to do it. There are many people who are involved in this, but it's not going to be done in October. And so I think that the more involved people are, the more engaged they are, either with civil society organizations in Israel, with different political parties in Israel, the more they're involved, the more they're involving their communities, the bigger the impact. And I, again, thank everybody for being here tonight and for being engaged in these issues.
Dan.
There are two groups that I relate to here when you spoke of the Jews in America. Some of you are Israelis. Come and vote. Come to vote. You can't vote by post like in America. You need to be here to vote. It's not going to be easy. Flying now with all the disturbances and the boycotts and whatnot, and the fact that American military Air Force is occupying half of the Ben Gurion airport, and it's not easy. But if that is important to you, and I think it should be important to all of us, but especially to Israelis, one thing is to do it from Palo Alto or New York or Texas or Maine. the other thing is to come here to where you are registered in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Beersheba, Haifa, wherever. Come and vote here. I hope not every vote counts, but maybe every vote counts. And being outside is a luxury. Is a luxury you shouldn't allow yourself to take. This is one thing. The other thing is that when I speak of Jews in diaspora, and I said earlier we are a Jewish state, let me state the following: the shareholders of this company called Israel are the Israelis, Jews and Arabs. Decisions are made here, and my voice and the voice of an Arab in Jerusalem or Nazareth is the same. We are the shareholders, but Jews in diaspora are option holders. To be in this metaphor that I use, and they have an interest in this country, not only because it may be a place they will want to go once or a shelter or something, but because this is where the Jews are developing the main Jewish center in our life, and you have a legitimate interest. I always used to listen to. I don't think they should make decisions. We should make it here, all Israelis, but the advice and the participation of the Jews in diaspora regarding Israel is very important. Not only because the basic law of the Jewish people says it, but this is how we are built. We have this pretense, so to speak, the good one, that we represent the Jewish people and we want to take care of Jewish people. And so you have a legitimate interest and a right, so to speak out your mind. And I think that everyone who is out there, not an Israeli, but American Jew, has a right to use whatever strings he can pull in talking with people that he knows, in coming, in investing here, in tourism. The connection with Israel is, I think, important not only to Israel, it's important to Jews in diaspora. And it is important now, it has always been important. It will be important in the future. And I agree with what Noah said about there's no 1 minute where everything is over. Hopefully, we begin a very heavy and long struggle to resurrect what Israel was, or to rebuild, or to try to build again. We need support. Now, again, I said the support can be from outside. The best way is to be here. Israelis or people who want to make Aliyah, this is to me the best thing. I still am this old-fashioned Zionist. This is what I think one should do. But even if you are out of Israel, you have an interest here, and come and use your voice in all legitimate ways in support of the struggle for democracy, the struggle for the basic values of a Jewish state, which are not only democratic values, but Jewish values. And it has an impact on all of us. So welcome.
I will just add one more thing to both the things that you said, and that is that we definitely know, and it's very clear post-October 7th, that what's happening in Israel definitely impact all of us all over the world, and that's clearly, no one can ignore that anymore. And in the same way, I mean, like, I want you to take from this conversation, I mean, like we just joked about it before the call, that I mean, like 5 or 6 or 7 years, if you bring Noah and Dan to sit together and talk about the risk to Israel, it might have not happened. And it's also happening in your synagogues right now. So the fight for democracy is not anymore left or right or it's basically populism against democracy. And that is something you can take from this call. And the last thing is, remember that America is also polarized, and America wasn't always a perfect union, and Israel is in the process of making it a more perfect union, and that's why it's important to send this message out. So think about Israel, even though we always make a laugh right now that President Trump is making all the decisions for Israel, but think about Israel as like you are thinking about a change you are trying to make in America. When you look into a swing district or a swing state, even though you cannot vote there, you can still focus on grassroots activities like go to vote or voter or election integrity or first-time voters. There is always grassroots organization who are non-partisan that will push Israel in the right direction. And I think that Dan is trying to say something more. So before we close,
no,
I thought that you're signaling with me the hand.
No, I'm not signaling. I happen to agree with this is the problem with, as I said earlier, you have here people who agree. I suppose all those who listen come from the same camp, more or less.
They agree because
we need to reach out to people who may change the voting pattern. Those who are always there on this side or that side are there. This is fine. But there is a lot of floating votes now, and we need to reach them and to make sure that on election day they will do what needs to be done. It seems to work, hopefully, and then to make clear to the new leadership what is at stake and how important the direction they take is, and the vision that they put to the people, and the readiness to work for it. And support from American Jewry will always be welcome.
Yeah, American Jewry, World Jewry. So thank you so much.
World Jewry, sorry. World Jewry.
Dan and Noah, and thank you to Varda and Regina and Janet for the translation. And thank you everyone who is joining, who is care. Keep staying in touch. We will send some more information about how you can help from remote. But most importantly, stay optimistic. We are going to hopefully win this election, and then we're going to fight to make it a more perfect Israel for everyone who lives between the river and the sea. Thank you so much.
Good evening from Jerusalem.
Good evening. Bye-bye.